Welcome back to Kings of Columbus on the podcast network. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, and we are a drafting. I think, Landis, this is the first draft for us since we got back together.
It is. I was trying to think if we have ever done one maybe on Buckeye Talk together before. I'm sure we have. And we've done a couple on the podcast daily, but you and I have not done one in a while. And I would like to live in a world where we only do drafts on Kings of Columbus. So let this be the first of many to come.
We could probably make that happen. We might have to make that happen. Everyone has fantasy football drafts coming up. You're in a mood for drafts, but we're not just like, although fantasy football is for money. So that matters. Have you ever done, like, I've been in fantasy football leagues, like, not for money, and I just, like, don't pay attention and just don't change my lineup all year? It has to be for money, right?
It has to be for money. Yeah, there have been many years where I've done like 7 fantasy football drafts, but then only pay attention to actually 2 of the leagues because those are the 2 that I paid for.
Yeah, so let the robots do the other drafts. No robots in this draft. This draft matters. The 22 best Ohio State football players right now, and there's intention to this. We're going to do this a couple times this year, and once you lay something down, you got to lay something down so you have a comparison to go back to. So what we are doing here is really trying to represent a consensus of who the 22 best Ohio State football players are. We're not trying to beat each other. We're not trying to look back in October and be like, oh, Landis, I can't believe we took that guy 5th. What a ridiculous pick. That's not the intention. We're not trying to be smarter than each other, which is probably a good thing. Maybe people think, well, they never do that. Why would they start now? We're really trying to represent the thought process of how people view this team right now. So that way, if the week before the Michigan game, Landis, if we do this again and CJ Hicks is the 4th pick in our draft because of the way he's played and the opportunities he's been given and the opportunities he's seized over the course of the year, I don't want to look back and be like, oh, well, Landis took CJ Hicks 9th in this draft, even though he wasn't supposed to start. Like, we're not trying to do that, right? We're trying to reflect what we think the current reality is.
We are, but I do think there's a little bit of a balance there. There are a few players that you do, I think, have to do that kind of projection. CJ Hicks is a great example. There are others. I won't list them because I'm sure we'll talk about them, but it'll make this exercise, I think, a more interesting one, but perhaps a little more difficult too, because I'm not trying to prove myself right, like, down the road, but I think also we need to try to give people an idea of how this coaching staff is viewing a handful of players who have not played a lot to this point, but we think might play a lot this fall.
So I think we're trying to reflect who we think the 22 best players will be in the opener against Indiana. So that doesn't have to be only guys who have played, to your point. There are some guys, and there are a couple truths that I think I came around on as a result of this exercise that we can talk about later. We won't do snake because then everyone's doing 2 picks. So we'll go back and forth. Let me say this. Marv's number 1, right?
Yeah, right.
So I feel like we can sort of lay that down. Nobody has to do that. We don't have to have a big explainer about it. We're still getting into our podcast, our show here, and we want people. We tell your friends, tell your family. Hey, Doug and Bill are back together. It's on Kings of Columbus on the podcast network. It's awesome. Help us spread the word. But sometimes you spread the word by making obvious points and then hammering them and being like, I don't care what anybody else says. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is Ohio State's best player. And then you see that on social media and you're like, what is this? People watch this? Or you say ridiculous things and you say, I don't care what anybody else says. I think Ty Hamilton is Ohio State's best player. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? So we're not going to do either of those things. That's not how we're going to operate on this show at all. So you have to help us spread the word through entertaining, sensible football talk, because I have a Hawaiian shirt on. But other than that, we're not going to just do outrageous things to be crazy. So Marv is 1.
Yeah, gotta be. I was going to ask about the Hawaiian shirt. Is that your draft shirt?
It's from Kohl's. So nice. It's one of those things when you're in the store and you're like, do I have too much plaid? Should I expand? And in the clearance moment on the rack, it's like, yeah, let's not live only in plaid. And then you get home and you think to yourself, I don't know, plaid's pretty good. Why am I wearing a Hawaiian shirt in everyday life? But I bought it, so you got to wear it.
It's pretty good. Like, I think there are some Hawaiian shirts that are if you're not in Hawaii, you shouldn't wear them. but I feel like this one's got some versatility to it.
It's an Ohio Hawaiian shirt.
So what's up?
That's the new Cole's line. Ohio Hawaii. Hey, do you like tropical things, but you've never been there? Marv is 1. So I'll let you now decide. Do you want to pick second, or do you want me to pick second? And then we're just going to go back and forth. But we agree. Every person in the world says Marvin Harrison Jr. is Ohio State's best player right now. And frankly, I would be shocked if he's not here every time we draft between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, I think I'd be willing to make that bet as well. I'll go second. And I'll take Emeka Egbuka. And I think there are. It's funny, like Marv is the best receiver in college football, which like totally overshadows Emeka Egbuka, who is probably the second best receiver in college football. And if Marvin Harrison Jr. was already in the NFL right now, where he should be, I think everyone would be going gaga over Emeka. And I guess there are, I don't know if I consider them valid questions, but there are questions of like how much of Emeka's success is dependent upon the fact that he exists with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's probably something to that. There's probably something to Marvin getting a little extra because he's playing with Emeka too. Like I think it probably goes both ways. But I think like if you look at the production, similar. If you look at draft pedigree or projected draft pedigree, like Emeka is going to be a first round pick. I don't think there's much discussion to be had here. Maybe one or two other guys, but I feel pretty strong that Emeka Egbuka is the second best player on this roster right now.
Yeah, I agree. He's had an interesting career because he's exactly on track. Mm-hmm. He was the number 1 receiver recruit in his class, did a little bit, not much as a freshman, which is what Ohio State receivers do. Started as a sophomore, had 1,000 yards, was great, and now is back as a preseason All-American as a junior. And all that happened is another guy in his class that was a lower-rated recruit became Marv.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't know about it. It's like Emeka, it is a straight line from everything he was in the recruiting process to everything he is now. It's just that Marv like built a new track over on the side and kind of went past him a little bit. But Emeka's a great player. I think he's clearly number 2. And I'll take a third offensive player here. And I think it's who you would have next. I'll draft Donovan Jackson 3rd here as the anchor of the offensive line, a returning starter at guard. And again, to me, this is talking a lot about how good you are at your position compared to other guys at your position. Is an offensive guard the most important thing compared to a edge rusher or a corner or whatever? But I'm not being an NFL GM. I'm being a best player and in the preseason that we are sure of. So I'll take Donovan Jackson 3rd. Did you have him here?
No, I would have taken Tommy Eichenberg. And we'll talk about him in a second. But Donovan is very good. Like I think by the end of the year, Donovan will probably be in this slot. I think I might have mentioned before. Like I thought he had an okay year last year, okay to pretty good year last year. I don't think it was anywhere near bad. But he's got some growth. I think he has to make this year. All-American potential for sure. Down the road potential to be like the top interior offensive lineman in his draft class. I believe all that. I've never really wavered on any of that. But there is projection, I think, still baked into the thought that he is the 3rd best player on this roster, whereas some other guys, the 2 we picked already, and Tommy, I think, have that production at a high level already in college. So I would have put Tommy there. So I'll pick Tommy next. I think it's fairly even, like 3rd, 4th, whatever. It doesn't matter. I think putting Donovan Jackson 3rd is a good indication of what we think is to come for him this year and how important he's going to be to the offensive line. But I would give a nod to Tommy based off of the totality, like the body of work up until this point. And I think like Tommy's going to be an excellent player again this year.
I'm a little surprised because you like linemen. But it's nice for you to expand your horizons and consider a middle linebacker. I don't disagree with anything you said. I had Eichenberg 4th on my list. So we have the same top 4, which I was curious about because I think there's another guy that we'll talk about in a second that other people would have in the top 4 that we don't have. I think there's still a little room on Tommy Eichenberg too for a ceiling. Once he's healthy, once he can, grab people with normal human thumbs, I think that will help him. And he is a playmaker. I was rewatching the Ohio State Michigan game from last year. and just flipping through some stuff. I was watching that whole, clicking through, but watching that whole game and just, refreshing on a few things. He's a playmaker. Like he's not, he'll track guys down in space and he's usually filling, the right gap and doing what he's supposed to do, but he's not just a do his job kind of guy. And so I think, in talking to Tommy and Steele Chambers this year, the pairing of them, that they're such good friends on and off the field, that they've played so many snaps together. Steele was talking about this, the idea that when you think alike, it allows you to maybe take a chance, freelance a little bit, go make a play because your linebacker partner is going to fill in behind you without you having to even give it a second thought. So I think it's possible that pairing will bring out the best in each other even more. And they are both such, I think, steady, reliable guys. And if they both can let it rip second year in the defense, both let it rip even more because of their understanding of the defense and of each other, I think there's maybe another level of ceiling for both of them. So what I'm most curious about is that we both have Tommy Eichenberg as the first guy on the defense. And I certainly considered other guys, but I didn't really hesitate much. I thought Eichenberg was the number one guy on the defense.
He's just really solid. There are guys with better physical traits. There are guys that are going to make more wow plays. Tommy, I think in a weird way is, I don't know if underappreciated is the right way to put it, but it kind of reminds me, I know you guys have had conversations about CJ Stroud and like his best attribute is the way he thinks about football, which is a hard thing to notice unless you're like really in the weeds, just watching that guy do his job, snap to snap. And I think that's Tommy's best trait too. Now he's a good athlete, and I think they're going to try to tap into some of that more this year. Jim Knowles was talking about putting him more in coverage. Clearly he's a pretty good blitzer. He's got good timing, good like side to side mobility, all that stuff. He has everything you want. He's just not like 6'4", 250 pounds running guys down. He's not Harold Perkins. So like he doesn't catch people's attention that way, but he is a very cerebral and fairly athletic player. And a guy who like hit 120 tackles last year. I think he can top that this year. And anymore in college football, it's hard to find linebackers that are that productive. I don't care who you're playing. So the fact that he did it last year, and I think he'll do it again this year, is a sign to me that he's one of the better players in the country at his position.
I have come a long way in my Tommy Eichenberg evaluation. And I've come from tough Borland comparisons to James Laurinaitis comparisons.
That's a pretty long way.
So I'm not actually, in the end, comparing Tommy Eichenberg to a three-time first-team All-American and James Laurinaitis, but I can remember when James Laurinaitis was coming out in the draft, and he stayed as a senior, as a third-year starter, and got nitpicked to death and fell to the beginning of the second round when I think he should have been a first-round pick, and I think his NFL career would show that he should have been a first-round pick. But he wound up, right, the testing stuff. It's like, okay, did he test the best? But the thing that I always said about Laurinaitis is, he starts his starting line. If you're judging him in a 20-yard shuttle or a 40-yard dash or anything, you have to just move up his starting line in the 40, like maybe 6 yards, because his instinct and knowledge means he starts before everybody else starts. So he's going to get there faster. Now, if you all start at the same time, you might beat him there, but he doesn't start when you start, because he knows what's coming. And I think Eichenberg is approaching that with film study, with knowledge, with just knowing, feeling it in this defense. I think Steele Chambers is getting there too with that kind of thing. And when you do that, Tough is a guy that they wouldn't take off the field because he set everything. He was the guy who made sure everybody else was in the right place. And he was the quarterback of that defense, but he's just limited physically once he gets out there. And so Tommy is not limited physically. And then when he knows what's happening before it happens, all of a sudden he's where the ball carrier is.
Yep.
So again, we can create that. It's the Borland Laurinaitis spectrum. If there's any scientists listening here, right, that would be a thing. And the wavelengths, like where you are in that, I think we could apply that to everybody. At least every linebacker, maybe every defender, maybe every other Buckeye for the rest of time. Where are you on the Borland Laurinaitis spectrum? And he has, once upon a time, it's like, okay, well, I know what end he's on.
Yeah.
And now I know what end he's on, and he's changed ends. So maybe I'm dumb. Also, maybe he got really good. Because again, there was another thing. I was going through Tommy Eichenberg's Twitter, which is just, it's like, hey, he posted 4 times in 9 years. But he had a photo. It was one of those linebacker group photos. It was in a locker room. It was at the end of a season. It was when Al Washington was still the linebackers coach. So I think it was at the end of the 2021 season. And no, maybe it wasn't. Pete Werner was in it. So Pete Werner is a places everybody in time. And Taraja Mitchell was right in the middle of it. And Tommy Eichenberg's head was barely in the photo. It was coming in off the side. It was a little blurry, almost like they were getting ready to take the photo. And Tommy Eichenberg was like, well, I guess I better stick my head in here. And it was a reminder. This is a guy who, like, by the end of that year, wasn't like starting. Like Cody Simon was taking snaps from him. And then did Cody Simon get hurt? And then he was the player of the game in the
Rose
bowl game. But it was like, it was almost like a surprise kind of thing because he wasn't primary. He wasn't. He was like, I don't know, is he going to beat out Cody Simon for this job? Who knows? And now he's 4th. Now he's 4th on the list. So he has come a long way. So on one hand, I feel kind of bad for maybe a misanalysis of Tommy Eichenberg. On the other hand, I just kind of think credit to him. Yeah. He's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He just got better. He got stronger. He got faster, and that he's been helped by the scheme too. And I don't say that to take anything away from Tommy, but I think with some of the ways that Jim Knowles likes to use his defensive line to kind of gum stuff up, it has allowed the linebackers to play much more freely than they were playing the first year that Tommy was like a quasi starter for the defense. But yeah, that linebacker group that year was not particularly well liked. And I feel like Tommy probably bared the brunt of that more than anyone else that year.
All right. 5th. I'm going to take the guy that I think should be taken here to be representative. If we were having trying to be cool and win the draft, I don't know if I would take him, but I'll take JT Tuimoloau here. And I think he should be 5th. Would he be 5th on your list?
Yes. He would. If we're not doing the let's pretend I'm the smartest guy in the room thing. Yes.
So I rewatched the Michigan game. I it's like, I almost don't want to say it. So here's the thing. He's very good at the point of attack. It's hard to move him.
Yeah.
He's really good against the run. He gums stuff up against the run. He had a really nice tackle in that Michigan game on a Donovan Edwards, like little inside run where he just takes things away. It's very hard to displace him. He does not have a ton of pass rush moves, and he was not incredibly impactful as a pass rusher. I don't know, like all that often. I felt like the Penn State game sticks in people's heads so much. His PFF grades, like for a lot of the year, are not spectacular. He's a good player. I think Zach Harrison was a better pass rusher than JT last year. And Zach Harrison, I think, still in the end is often defined by not quite getting home, right? Being close, but not all the way there. Mm-hmm. Zach, I think, is more impactful snap to snap. JT is very good. He has a nice bull rush. He's really strong. I think he's very solid. I think he is fundamental, right? I don't know that he is a game wrecker, but he wrecked one game as much as any defensive player in the country wrecked any single game last year. And I just maybe am advising people, don't expect the Penn State game from JT every week this year, or you might be disappointed. So it's ridiculous. I'm not trying to like talk him down. I'm trying to temper our expectations perhaps. And honestly, I think maybe this defense will work even better if next time we do this, he's 9th here instead of 5th, because a few more guys have started to do some things that are splashy and super impactful, but I can't go any lower than 5th for him now.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think he's a very, like, I thought Zach Harrison was a good player. Good in the ways I suppose people didn't want him to be good, or in a different way that people wanted him to be good, but good nonetheless. I think JT has been more that kind of player to this point, like a pretty solid guy against the run, is going to bull rush guys who can't block him back into a quarterback slap, but he doesn't have a Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa arsenal of moves as a pass rusher. And I guess he can develop that. He's only a true junior. I would want to give a guy, I guess, a little bit of leeway to improve, a little bit of runway to improve. And I think he can do that. I don't know what I actually do think he'll still end up being a first round pick because he's 6'5", 270 pounds and moves incredibly well. Like, regardless of what you think of his pass rushing arsenal, guys his size should not be able to do the things he was doing athletically against Penn State. And like, even if you offer up the caveat that like he was going up against a backup right tackle when he did much of that stuff, and he was like, I think that's important to point out. He wasn't going against Olu Fashanu when he was doing that stuff. He was going against the right side of the line where they were playing a backup tackle. And he manhandled that guy, which is what he's supposed to do. So like, job well done there. But it was not that every week. I don't think it's going to be that every week. And I think some of the projections that are out there for him are going to lead people to expect that every week. So I almost feel like he's getting set up for failure a little bit. But I do think he's a good player. I don't know if I agree about him being ninth thing. I think he needs to be this team, like he needs to be among the I don't know, I guess if he's among the 3 or 4 best defensive players, and the ninth is not out of the question. But I do think there's a pathway out there for him to become a consistently dominant player. We haven't seen it, and I can't promise that he's going to get there. So even with that, I think 5th on this list makes sense, but I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a letdown coming if people are expecting him to suddenly morph into Chase Young or a Bosa brother.
And I think there's some coverage out there that's expecting that. I think there's some coverage out there that's like JT and Jack Sawyer in year 3. Could they be that? And it'd be great. Go do it. But I don't know that we're really in Chase Young Bosa brother comparison range yet. So, and I don't think they have to be to win a national title.
No.
And the point you're saying that's JT needs to be good. They need JT to be one of the best players on this defense. You expect him to be the best guy up front. They've got to get after the quarterback. They've got to, affect the game, create havoc, that kind of thing. But there's just some guys that I think are going to shoot up the board, and we're being very patient. We're being very grown up and mature as we don't pick them yet.
What we will pick them because there is a guy in this conversation.
All right, go 6th. Yeah. Go 6th. Oh. So I didn't even, he's not even on my list. There's another podcast we want to do. I'm claiming him. I'm not letting I'm so wrong on when I claim guys, and I feel like I'm right on this guy. Who do you have 6th on our list?
So let me before I pick a guy, like I felt this to me was like, oh, this is where now it gets interesting after the top 5. And whatever order you had them, I thought the top 5 we have was probably going to be the top 5.
Yes. I agree.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people would have JT higher. I don't know that anyone's going to argue. If you would have JT 3rd and Donovan Jackson 3rd, JT 3rd, Donovan Jackson 5th, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's an argument. I don't know that there's an argument that someone is going to pound their fist and say somebody else should be in the top 5. I agree. This is where the draft really starts.
Okay. So I don't have super strong conviction in this pick, but because there are a few different ways you can go, but I'm going to go, I think I'm going to go Mike Hall. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Mike Hall here. I don't know what you think of him, but I'm trying to think of upside, and like he did not play a lot last year, but when he played, I always felt like you felt his presence on the field. And I feel like that is the thing that Ohio State's defensive line has been missing for a couple of years. It's like when that guy's on the field, you're going to watch him on every single snap because something cool is going to happen. And I think Mike Hall is that kind of player. And maybe the sample size is too small. Maybe this is too much projection for this exercise. But when I think about the guys on this roster who have potential to be an All-American consideration, I don't think it is a super long list, but I think Mike Hall is on it.
So I went through PFF and did everybody's snaps on offense and defense in their careers. Didn't include special teams, but all their snaps on offense and defense. Mike Hall has played 301 career snaps He played 35 as a freshman. He played 266 last year. That is not a ton.
Yep.
And so I had him lower than this because that was a reminder to me of I wonder if we're a little out over our skis on Mike Hall also. After his freshman season, Tyleik Williams was a guy that a lot of the outside people were saying, like, oh, watch for year two. I just thought Tyleik Williams in year one, 2 years ago, was a small sample size guy. Like, I don't like just because you did it in 188 snaps and a lot against backups doesn't mean you're going to do it. Now, Mike Hall, again, playing fewer than 300 snaps last year, it wasn't in garbage time. They were quality snaps. It's just that he was injured for part of the year. He was part of the Larry Johnson defensive rotation. When you watch him, he has the feet of an edge guy. Like, he moves like an edge guy, and he's an interior guy. And I think he might be their best, well, maybe since Draymond Jones, is he their best interior pass rusher? Their best pass rusher at defensive tackle since Draymond, probably, right?
Yeah.
And those guys change games. And it's always been a thing, I think, at Ohio State. That's what separates the SEC. That's what is hard to find athletes with that size and those feet. And I think Mike Hall might be that guy. But I held myself back because, man, he has not played much.
It's fair. If it were a product of anything other than injury, I might weigh it more, and maybe I should weigh it more because of that. I don't know. Like, do you disagree with me saying that, like, he is a guy that when he's on the field, you notice that he's on the field?
No, I don't disagree. I wonder if he'll be that same kind of player, 50 snaps a game for 14 games.
Yeah.
Is one of the reasons you notice him because he didn't play as much as the other guys who were wearing down in a game and in a season.
Potentially. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if any of these guys, at least at the moment, like in my mind, I don't think any of these defensive linemen warrant playing the 50 per snap game thing. Like, that's Chase Young played that much. I think Joey Bosa played that much. Nick Bosa was close to that, but not quite there. I don't think there's anyone on this line at the moment who's done enough to say that they should be playing quite that much. But even if Mike Hall is like a 35 to 40 snap per game guy, that is a significant uptick in workload. And I think he can be an effective player with that kind of workload.
Georgia wanted Jordan Davis to be a Heisman candidate in 2021 when he was playing he was playing like 36% of the snaps or something for Georgia at defensive tackle that year. So you can be a high impact, super important, game-wrecking defensive tackle playing far less than half your team snaps. So that is on the board for him. And if he's in there on third down, making the quarterback throw the ball out of bounds on 3rd and 8 because he blew up a double team inside and got to the quarterback, then I think that's on the board. There's probably one guy who I'll take here who's laid it down. And it's one of these things in an exercise like this, sometimes you wind up choosing between guys who have not done it as much and guys who have done it far more, but then in the process of doing it more have had bad moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to be good all the time when you're constantly on the field. So I think the guy I'm taking here fits in that mold, and it's Denzel Burke. Because I think what Denzel Burke has laid down at his best, in terms of quantity and I think at peak quality, dwarfs some people in this discussion. But then he also had kind of a rough start last year. So when I went through the snaps, he has the second most career snaps of anybody on this team. He's played 1,319 career snaps on offense or defense. And do you want to guess who's the only guy ahead of him? The only Buckeye who's played more career snaps on offense or defense than Denzel Burke?
What's the number? 1,000 what?
1,319 for Burke. So the person ahead of him has played 1,500.
Oh, man. Matthew Jones?
That is correct. Well done. Yeah. Okay. That'd be tricky for some people, not for you. What am I gonna? I'm gonna slide a lineman trivia question past you. You'd be like, "Oh, I can't think of the linemen. Who are the linemen?" You're like, "No, it's Matt Jones. What are you talking about?" Because Matt Jones has played 4 years, man. So Denzel Burke. I think the good version of Denzel Burke has a chance to be really good. He played 734 snaps as a true freshman in 2021, 585 last year. When we got him at interviews this preseason, I talked to him afterward and I said, you remind me of somebody. It's the way he was kind of laying it down. Very confident guy in a way that I really, really, really like. And I think he's built to this confidence, like genuinely, through ups and downs, through knowing how well he played as a true freshman who nobody expected him to play that much. And they didn't have anywhere else to turn. And he was like, I got it. And then as a sophomore, when you thought he was going to pop, he got hurt and he didn't play as well. And so he's lived through that. So I said, you remind me of Bradley Roby, the way you kind of put it out there and lay it down. He's like, I trade with Bradley Roby. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why. So Bradley Roby is a guy, Bradley Roby's not Denzel Ward. He's not Marshawn Lattimore, wasn't drafted as high as Garyon Conley or Eli Apple or whatever, but he kind of got here and laid it down. And at like the beginning of BIA, right? I mean, like this run of corners, Bradley Roby helped establish it. And I feel like Denzel Burke might be the guy who's leading the reestablishment of this. And I think perhaps it is ready to be reestablished, because I was then talking to Tim Walton and saying like, hey, like I'm very high on what I think these top three corners could be for this team.
Yep.
So I was dropping some 2016 Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, Denzel Ward stuff on Tim Walton. And Tim Walton was like, okay. I don't, like maybe not that. But other than me trying to compare these corners to guys who all wound up as first round picks, he was just like, I think we got a chance. I think we got a chance. I think we got a chance. And it changes everything to me if this is what happens. And Burke's the leader. Yep. Burke is laying it down. And so I think he has a chance to have a spectacular season for what he's been and what he could be.
I think he does too. The thing I like about Denzel is that like he is, if you spend some time around him, you could, I guess, consider him cocky. And frankly, I think I would too. That's fine. I like my cornerbacks to be cocky. But the thing that I appreciate about him is that he has been introspective about last year, and that like he did not rise to the occasion, and for myriad reasons. It wasn't just his skill set. He was hurt, but like he has admitted to like not living up to the standard that he had set for himself as a true freshman, as a sophomore, which I appreciate and makes me believe that he's going to get it back and then some this year. So I like Denzel a lot. I think I agree with you. He is the leader of what I think is a resurgent moment for the cornerback room. Maybe they're not all top 10 picks. And frankly, maybe I don't even know if there's a first round pick among the starters. Maybe it works out that there's not one, but I think they have three serious dudes with him and Jordan Hancock and Davis and Igbinosun, and he is the leader of that group. So it's a good pick. I don't know. I probably would have picked him. I think there is another defensive back who is in the conversation, like another veteran defensive back in the conversation, who I think I will pick now, is Lathan Ransom. He had a terrible moment at the end of the Peach Bowl, not pretending like that didn't happen. I would hope that we don't come to define players for their worst moments and try to appreciate the totality of the body of work. And he's been a very good player for Ohio State for like 2.5 years. Played a big role as a freshman, as like a slot corner, and in that bandit position last year, coming off a broken leg where like he didn't have a preseason. Halfway through the year, like he was in the Thorpe Award conversation. And I don't think that was just like, oh, let's throw an Ohio State guy there. Like I thought he was playing at that level. Did he maintain it over the entirety of the season? Maybe not. And maybe that was the lack of an offseason catching up to him. I'm not sure. But if you were ranking last year the guys on defense who were just like solid and you didn't worry all that much about up until that last game, Lathan was pretty high up on that list. Like he might have been second behind Tommy. I think he's a really good player. So I'll pick him in this 8th spot after Denzel. And I think either of those veteran or more established defensive backs could have gone in either of these two last spots.
Lathan Ransom 5th in career snaps on offense and defense among the current Buckeyes. Of guys we drafted, Denzel Burke is 2nd, Tommy Eichenberg is 3rd, and now Lathan Ransom is 5th. I So having just watched the Ohio State Michigan game, there's a couple plays in that game, like the second Donovan Edwards touchdown run. No. The first so the second Donovan Edwards touchdown run, they have Lathan Ransom on the end of the line and he run blitzes and they just run away from him. And
he took a false step towards JJ McCarthy and then Donovan Edwards snuck through the hole. Yeah.
And I'm wondering what Jim Knowles is doing. And then, but the first touchdown run, he's back in center field and they blitz every linebacker. Jim Knowles put, I think, 4 extra linebackers in the game so he could blitz them all. I think they blitzed 7 linebackers on that play. And Lathan Ransom's the last line of defense back in center field, and he can't make the tackle on the sideline. And he's also involved in that. It's Denzel, Burke, and Lathan Ransom kind of get crossed up on the third touchdown pass, like the third coverage break. I don't like him in center field. I want him down closer to the line making plays. So I know sometimes when you're disguising things pre-snap, right, you're going to shift the safeties and you might wind up back deep and the other guy drops down. I don't want him as the last line of defense. I want him attacking. I want him taking, swing passes and Lathan Ransom's chasing the guy down and dropping him for a loss. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of playmaking, he is one of the best defensive playmakers on this team. Be the guy that makes sure nothing gets out of the house. I don't know that that's the best role for him. I want him on the attack. So I had him lower because maybe the mistakes are sticking in my mind. But I think the good plays are also, I think he has a chance to make as many splash good plays as anybody on this defense.
Yeah, and I think the mistakes are the mistakes. I'm not trying to pretend like they don't exist. When they are mistakes that, in my mind, are more born out of the staff putting a guy in a bad position, I tend to let it slide a little more. And I think that is what happened with some of the plays. Like Lathan Ransom should not have been covering that guy in the slot in the Peach Bowl, and probably should have been playing deep center field on that run in the Michigan game. Now, make the play, right? It's the standard at Ohio State. You're in position to make a play, make the play, and he didn't do that in 2 fairly important moments. But he made a lot of other plays, and I think as a down in the box safety, he's pretty damn good. He's among the best, I think, that I've seen in my time covering Ohio State when he can be hyper focused on, I'm in the box, I'm keyed on the run, I'm covering a tight end, I'm cutting off intermediate passes. I think he's good at all that stuff.
Okay. Do you want me to be disciplined and mature still right now at pick number 9? I feel like I should be. We're so mature. We've come such a long way, Landis.
Yeah.
We used to be so young.
But it'll make the future episodes more interesting.
When a guy jumps more.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to be disciplined and mature, and I'm going to give a nod to peaks that have been established, and I'll take TreVeyon Henderson.
Okay.
So I had one guy on my actual list ahead of him. Ryan Day, when we spoke with Ryan Day recently, said that TreVeyon Henderson has had a great preseason. It feels like he's back on track. I will say it applies to Denzel Burke. It applies to TreVeyon Henderson. It applied to J.K. Dobbins. I'm sure there's other guys it applies to. There are guys... I feel like there's a little bit of a sophomore jinx at Ohio State. The guys who really splashed as freshmen. It is not always, but it is not just 1 or 2 guys where year 2, both the internal expectations, maybe you get a big head, maybe, you hit a bump physically. There's a little competition. I don't know, but this applies to Burke and Henderson. And if he's healthy and back, then okay, then let's see what's up. I still don't think he's going to be a Heisman candidate, which I thought off his freshman year he would be one day, just because I think they'll rotate the backs. I think they've maybe tweaked a philosophy there. When Ezekiel Elliott shows up, they'll give him the ball 25 times a game. Until then, and Trey's not that. Mm-hmm. Until then, they'll have a stable of backs and try to keep guys healthy. So, but based off what his peak was, and if you chalk up most of last year to his foot was hurt and he couldn't cut, then I think this is the right spot for him.
I found it interesting, and I'm wondering if you picked up on this too. When we spoke with Ryan Day on Monday, he had a few very nice things to say about TreVeyon Henderson and then lumped all the other running backs together. Yeah, which I thought was noteworthy. That was, to me, this is our 1A back. we'll figure out the rest. There will be times for everyone else to play and get their work. But the fact that he didn't talk about, and maybe it's because Mayan's been out, maybe that's the reason, but he did not talk about in that particular moment TreVeyon Henderson and Mayan Williams being on equal footing. It was TreVeyon and then the rest of the room, which I don't think is wrong, because I think peak TreVeyon should be treated that way. He also mentioned, without being prompted, something about TreVeyon like finding the right holes when he's running the ball, which is intentional, because I think there were issues with that last year, both stemming from the injury and also I just think of it like not being a particular strength of TreVeyon's at times. And I do wonder, I think there's an interesting conversation maybe to be had with Tony Alford, probably be better than anyone else, about like how much can you teach vision? Because if you can, and TreVeyon has gotten even a little bit better at that, and he's healthy, then I think he is poised for what could be a pretty monster season. I don't think the ceiling is Heisman Trophy winner, at least not in this offense. But I think it is close to like the 1,400 yards or whatever it was he had as a true freshman. Like I think that's out there for him in his third year, provided his body allows him to get there.
I think last year was really rough for him, mentally, physically. I think there were some thoughts of, is this the right place for me? I think they had to get him back. Understandable, right? I feel like it wasn't just the injury. I think there was a disconnect last year between TreVeyon and the offense, TreVeyon and the team. I don't think there was a disconnect between TreVeyon and Tony Alford, because I think Tony Alford knows his guys pretty well. Yep. So this is not a position coach thing. I just think it was like his role, how they're doing things in a world where CJ and Marv and Emeka are doing their thing and where TreVeyon is not healthy, and some of the things of like at times it feels like holes. I do think Ryan Day is trying to get him back. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I also think some guys who are feeling confident, you don't have to talk about them. You actually want to talk them down to make sure their heads don't get too big. I think TreVeyon needs to know that he's valued. And I think Ryan Day is making it very clear. I think it's purposeful. I don't think he's lying, but I think he is making sure publicly that TreVeyon Henderson knows that Ohio State's got his back, because I think they think that's what he needs.
Yeah, he definitely needs it, because he all but said it like a couple of times. Sometimes players say things like, oh, I hear what people say about me. Like one time we were talking to TreVeyon and he said something along those lines. We're like, oh, do you mean in the media? He's like, no, I mean here in the Woody. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So yeah, I think that is important for a guy like him, which is fine. You know, positive information is good for everybody. So yeah, I think I don't know if we would have did this 2 weeks ago, I don't think I would have had TreVeyon this high, because I would have envisioned more of a tandem thing or a committee thing with the running back room. The closer we get to the season, the less I'm thinking along those lines. Like everyone's still going to play, obviously, and like bumps and bruises happen. Guys are going to need to play, but I think TreVeyon could be, I don't know, the closest thing you can have to a bell cow when you have 5 scholarship running backs who can all play for you.
So this was a round where you had him?
Yeah. No, this is I think that's who I would have gone with if I was picking in that spot.
All right.
Yeah,
all right, for
sure.
So pick 10 to you.
This
if
is really,
you let it rip after you made me be mature, I'm going to be mad.
I know. I'm trying not to do that.
I'm not being mature anymore, though. I'm done being mature.
Yeah. Okay, we can get to that territory after this pick, because I do think like you talked about pretty good when we were talking about Tommy. Like Steele Chambers is a good productive player for this defense, and I think will be a good productive player for this defense this fall. There's like the CJ Hicks conversation, and should CJ be cutting in the Steele Chambers snaps? My answer to that is like, why? Like what shortcomings are there with Steele that you think that should be the case? If it's just that you think CJ is really good and needs to get on the field, I hear you. I'm there with you. But that to me is not a situation where like guys are playing just because they're older and keeping a young guy down on the depth chart when he shouldn't be. Like Steele has been good, and I think gotten better every year he's been at linebacker. He provides them a speed element at that position. I thought he was awesome in the Peach Bowl, like for the majority of that game. There were some defensive miscues, but I thought Steele was excellent. He's gotten stronger. He's like worked on the things that he's needed to work on over the last few years. So like I appreciate that about him. And like 70 tackles last year. I think he can get closer to 100 tackles this year, depending on how much CJ Hicks actually does cut into that snap count. just good, like solid, reliable player. And I think we're getting to the point on this list where we're running short on those. So I want to pick Steele here.
I had him 13th. You're taking him 10th. This feels like the right range. There's one more solid, reliable player that I don't want to take here. But let me ask you a question first. Should we draft the QB rather than trying to figure out, as we record this, we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be. Should we draft the QB spot with an assumption that whoever wins that job is going to be X, and that's what we're picking? Or how should we handle this? Because we're about to be halfway through the exercise when I make pick 11, and we haven't had a quarterback conversation at all.
I think, yeah, I don't think we should like try to pick who the starting quarterback is with this. Because honestly, whoever it is, I think does not change the offense much. I think they're fairly similar players. So I think like the QB generally is a fine way to do it.
It's not Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, like what Alabama's trying to do,
right?
Where they might wind up playing two guys because it's not Dwayne Haskins, Tate Martell, where you have two entirely different skill sets. So, okay, we will be drafting the QB, but we won't be drafting him now because I'm done. This is it. I'm going to take Sonny Styles.
Yep.
I actually had him 7th on my list. He's going 11th here, but I think this is appropriate, and now we can watch him move. But I couldn't wait any longer, right?
Right. No, I think this is healthy. I think I think the next time we do this, he will be much higher than 11th. But I think it's fair to everyone to be a little cautious and draft a guy who's never played as the 11th best player on the team.
Yes, I'm very proud of us. We've come a long way. He's played 69 career snaps on defense. So, but I think there are 3 defensive players who have basically never played who might end up defining this defense. And he's number 1. So
I know the other 2 are.
So, and I think by the end of the year, if everything pops, all 3 of those guys will be in the top 10, and that will be good for everybody. And if it's not at least 2, like if they don't hit on all those 3, then I think maybe they're not who we think they can be. But it starts with Sonny Styles, who Denzel Burke dropped the Isaiah Simmons comparison. And again, I can never tell what's a thing and what's people just regurgitating things back to us that we say. He's the linebacker, safety, edge rusher from Clemson several years ago who was sort of undefinable but did everything. And it's a guy that I know the media has referenced, but when a player says it, like, okay, you open the door, it's okay now, we can say it. So we just all know what this could be, Bill, but also it's the way the Buckeyes themselves are talking about it. This is not out on a limb. Like whatever we say, if we're like, oh, we think he's going to be great, we think he's going to be a game changer, we think he's his own unique kind of guy that there's nobody like, I think everybody in the building would be like, yep. They would nod along. Somebody else said the word unicorn. I think Denzel Burke might have said unicorn.
Perry Liano said you're a unicorn.
Oh, no, it was his coach.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're okay.
Yeah.
Perry Liano's listening to this being like, I can't believe you didn't take him in the top 5. What are you doing?
Like, but the potential is there for him to be like 2 on this list by the time the season is over. And if he is 2, then like Ohio State probably won the national championship. I think he's that much of a difference maker. Like that 3 level defender, versatile guy is like a cheat code, I think, in college football. And like there's not a lot of them, obviously. But I think Sonny is one of those. This is more my opinion than it is based on anything anyone has ever said, just like picking up on vibes. I kind of feel like he's never going to come off the field. Like he might move around to different spots if he's at the nickel in the base defense, but there's a particularly difficult slot matchup. Maybe he drops back and plays the deep safety position, or he flips over and he plays the strong safety position, or he drops down in the box and he plays linebacker or whatever. Put him on the line, let him stand up and rush. I think he can do all that stuff. So, that's why I think like even though we're trying to be a little more pragmatic with this and not get over our skis on guys, I think it's okay to draft a guy who's played 69 defensive snaps this high, because I think he is I think there are 2 guys. Yeah. No, maybe 3 if I include Lathan Ransom. 3 guys, maybe 4 if Denzel Burke. 4 guys, 4 guys who are going to play every meaningful defensive snap for this team, and Sonny Styles is one of them.
Okay. Were you going to take him next if I didn't take him there?
Yeah, I wanted to take him with my last pick, but I wanted to be a gentleman about it too.
Okay, that's how you are. Who's 12th?
So what are we? Are we kicking a door in here on
His coach called him a unicorn. Anyone who is referred to as a mythical beast by his coach is now on the table. If you're not, maybe still lean a little bit towards experience, but I'm going to take a guy who I've barely played with my next pick, so it's okay.
The problem is like there are guys on this team who have played a lot who I don't want to be dismissive of their importance, but like positionally, I just maybe don't think it's worth picking them at this point. Like they're on the list. I think we'll get to them. But like multi-year starters, one of whom we've already mentioned, I think that I just feel like 12 is still too high. And there are guys who have not played a lot that I think are going to be really, really important to their effort this year. So I'm going to pick, I think I'm going to pick Jordan Hancock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my next pick.
Okay. Like, honestly, what this should be is just to be like, here are the things Denzel Burke told us and why we rank guys this way.
I love Denzel Burke.
Because
that's why I ranked him 5th.
Yeah. So what Denzel said of Jordan Hancock, he's the best off corner he's ever played with, which is like, you played college football for 2 years. What does that really mean? But like very high praise from a guy who takes his craft seriously and thinks he's very good. And I like the idea of Denzel Burke in the boundary, in your face, going to hand fight you, going to press you on the line. Jordan Hancock on the other side, just going to eat up a lot of space. And those are your 2 corners. Like Davis Nigbinosin is obviously in that mix too. I think it's Jordan Hancock and Davis Nigbinosin on one side, Denzel Burke on the other, and their skill sets are different enough that it's like the best of both worlds at either corner spot.
Jordan Hancock's going to lead this team in interceptions. So
yeah, I get behind that.
This is how I envision it. So the quarterback drops back. They should get some pressure. He looks left, looks to the boundary. Denzel Burke is playing press man on his guy. First read, it's not there. Now he comes back to the other side of the field, and he thinks he sees something, but Jordan Hancock also sees it because Denzel Burke called Jordan Hancock very cerebral, super smart dude, and that he thinks there's a window there, and Jordan Hancock breaks on the ball and picks it off. And like, that's the defense working. Or Sonny Styles undercuts the same route. Or Jordan Hancock and Sonny Styles meet at the guy, and Sonny puts his shoulder in his chest and the ball pops in the air and Jordan Hancock's right there and picks it off. But that combination, when Denzel Burke started talking that way, that Denzel Burke wants to press up and be in your face, and Jordan Hancock is great at playing off and reading quarterbacks and reading what an offense wants to do. That's how you get picks. It's when you can play off coverage and break on the ball. So back in the days, I mean, like when they were playing press man all the time, you're just running with the guy. And maybe if they try to squeeze something in and you turn your head at the last minute, that's all the conversations we had a million times about why don't the cornerbacks turn and look for the ball. And like a lot of times, like, you mean the cornerbacks who were glued to the receiver? Like, did we, because you can just be beaten by 4 yards. And then you're not having a conversation of why he didn't look. Because like, well, he didn't look because he was 5 yards behind the guy. A lot of times Ohio State guys were right there, but Jordan Hancock playing off like that combo, I loved it. I think this is the right spot for him. And I think he has a chance to have an outstanding year, and he's different to me. The evaluation of him is different because the coaches talk about him like he would have been a starter last year if he was healthy. Yeah. So this is not, it's just pure injury. He would have been on the field. All the Cam Brown stuff you saw would have been Jordan Hancock, a lot of it. And I think it would have been better. So this is not, hey, you're picking a guy who's never played. He showed it in August a year ago, and they got his hamstrings, kept him off the field.
Yeah, and I think, and you know, when he did play last year, maybe it wasn't all that awesome. I don't care. Like, he wasn't practicing, and he said, like, it's like, I didn't have an off season. My hamstring was practically off the bone in camp. And then they just sort of like threw him into it at the end of the year. Like, maybe they shouldn't have. I don't know if he was healthy enough to play. Maybe it's good that he got that experience, but I don't take anything we saw on the field really from Jordan Hancock last year. I think to myself, like, that guy can't do it. It's more everything they said about him right up until the point where he got hurt, which is, this guy's awesome. This guy's the next one. This guy's going to be a starter, an important player for our defense. And I think all those things are still true about him.
103 defensive snaps last year, 134 for his career. You took him 12th. I'll be mature. I'll take Cade Stover. I think he's the last, like, super established. You know what he is. He's really valuable to them. If he wasn't here, Joe Royer's been out during camp, who you think is like the second tight end. Then it's G. Scott, who I still think is a little bit of a receiver in a tight end body and still making that transition. And then it's Jelani Thurman, who looks the part, but is a true freshman. Cade Stover has saved them at this position. Now, this will be the second year that he's done that. He's much more of a playmaker catching the ball than I think people anticipated. I think he's a good blocker of the run game. I think, they said it last year. Sometimes I think when he's out in space and having to block on screens and some of that stuff, I think I was watching something in the Michigan game. I was like, would have been a good block to make there.
Yep.
They ran like a little toss play to chip train him on 3rd and 3 that like went backwards. And I was like, of all the things that went wrong in the Ohio State Michigan game, I was like, this might be the low point. And I think Cade Stover was involved in like not making the block he needed to make there. Anyway, this is probably too low. He's very good and they really need him. And by the end of last year, people were like, is he going to be picked like in the middle of the second round if he goes to the NFL? So I don't know. Are we underestimating him, leaving him till 13?
No, it's like the nature of his position too. I am like Joe Royer being out is actually fairly concerning to me, because I think one of the things, and like Keenan Bailey was talking about this when we spoke to him back in May, Cade was playing like every offensive snap by the end of the year. And I think you saw some slippage in his play because of that. And he was also injured. They need other tight ends to play. And I don't like Ryan Day's thing is like, you got to be able to play in 11 personnel before he can play in 12. I don't know that I look at G. Scott as a guy that can play in 11 personnel the way that they use the position. And if he can't, and if Joe Royer's hurt and like Bennett Christian is suspended, Ryan Day didn't even mention the name Sam Hart. And then it's like Jelani Thurman, which, if you want to play Jelani Thurman, I'm all for it. I don't think they will, because they've never done anything like that. It can get pretty precarious. And I'm worried about Cade wearing down in a similar way that he did last year. And that is in the back of my head, but I guess I don't want to project that. So if I'm not projecting that, this feels right to me. There's another offensive player too that's played a lot that we haven't talked about. But Cade is good, and Cade, like, halfway through the year, everyone was like, this is the best tight end we've ever seen at Ohio State. And then like he missed some blocks on the perimeter against Penn State, and everyone was like, this guy sucks. Like, I think there's a middle ground there where he actually exists. And in that middle ground, I think he is one of the more complete tight ends that Ohio State has had probably in the last decade.
Other than Stover and Royer, I don't know that there's a tight end that they think can block in the run game right now, right? Which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're playing in 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, and you just want to run some inside zone with Travion Henderson, or you want to run wide zone and you've got to be on the edge and make a block, or the play is going to get strung out and go for minus yards. I don't know if they think they have that. So valuable. But we don't have to feel bad that he lasted till 13. All right. Who you have 14?
Josh Fryer. Right tackle Josh Fryer. Right tackle Josh Fryer. Not left tackle Josh. If this is left tackle Josh Fryer, I don't think I would have picked him. Right tackle Josh Fryer, I think, has a chance to be very good. You're out. You're out on the idea?
Well, I'm not out on the idea of him being the right tackle. We have a tackle podcast coming. We have a tackle kings of tackles, dukes of tackles, maybe not kings of tackles at Ohio State right now. Maybe archdukes. What's lords of tackle? Like, you're in the royal family, but you're not gonna be king. You're like a cousin. So this is high. And if this is the guy, this is not the guy you were talking about that's played a lot. I'm a little surprised that you took Fryer over that guy. I like Fryer at right tackle more than I like at left tackle. I said to you the other day in our segment called Doug Reveals Things That Bill and Doug Talk About Off the Air, I said, like, I don't know about Fryer moving. You're like, I don't know. I think he moves pretty well. So he got put in the Michigan game last year. They lost a series last year because Enoch Vamahi got destroyed by Mozzie
Smith. Yeah.
And if, by the way, like when we have our tackle conversation, which is if the tackle thing is not great, how much will it hold them back? And there were some plays in the Michigan game where I was like, oh, yeah, no, you need an offensive line. You do. I needed to double check. Do you need an offensive line? And I was watching that. I was like, yep, you definitely do. So I thought I was trying to watch him move in that game. And I thought, no, he is moving pretty well. He's really big. He is significantly larger than everybody else in the tackle conversation. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, he's built differently. He's more squared off than...
He's all shoulders.
Yeah.
He's the shoulder guy I think that they've seen at Ohio State since Andy Katzenmoyer. He takes up like a spot and a half. I don't think they need a tight end on the field when he plays because he's half a tight end. He's so broad-shouldered across the top. It's not disconcerting, but I think it throws off my evaluation of Joshua Jimmy Simmons because I'm like, well, you're 1/3 as wide as Josh Fryer. How is this possible? All right. The floor is yours. Why? Why this high?
Well, I think we were at the point. The reason I did not pick Matthew Jones is because I think Matthew Jones. I think to pick a guard, like to put a guard anywhere on this list, you have to have some extraordinary athletic traits that I think like a guy like Donovan Jackson has, and I just think Matthew Jones does not have them. Very solid player, and people will talk about him a lot, maybe nationally, because he is a multi-year starter at Ohio State, which is, it's no small feat. But I'm trying to take like ceiling into account here when we're doing this, especially at this point when we're like past basically everyone who has played besides Matthew Jones. I don't like. I am probably thinking too much about how Josh Fryer played against Indiana because Indiana stinks. I thought he was awesome in that game. Like I was watching the Indiana game last year thinking they're good, right? Like DeJuan Jones is going, they're good. Josh Fryer's got it. They're fine. And then they were like, well, we're going to move him to the left. I was like, I don't know about that. And I think he embraced that idea, struggled with it. Certainly toward the end of spring ball, still was dabbling in it at the beginning of camp. And I think the fact that everyone has come around to the idea of like, you know what, let's not mess with him. Let's put him back in the spot that we know he's good at. I think will allow him to reach a level of play that this offense needs from him. So it's projection for sure. Is he going to be an All-American? I don't know. But he's going to be on the field for every offensive snap. And other guys that we're talking about here are not going to be on the field for every snap, regardless of what position they're playing at. It's really important that they have at least one good tackle. And I don't know what I feel about the left tackle conversation, but now that I know that Josh Fryer's at right tackle, I'm not thinking much about it. I think they're set there.
Chop Robinson lines up over Josh Fryer for 65 snaps, 55 snaps in the Ohio State-Penn State game. You're good?
Tomorrow? No. By the end of October, maybe.
Do you believe he will be what's like the baseball thing? People were pointing out, so this is a new feature we can add to Kings of Columbus. Words Doug can't think of in the moment that then people have to say the thing. So I was trying to think of the phrase emotional intelligence on a previous podcast, and people reminded me of that. Like wins above replacement, right? Like replacement level play.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that Josh Fryer's wins above replacement grade is positive or negative?
Positive.
Okay. I don't know.
Do you not, because Luke Montgomery exists, and if something happened to Josh Fryer, they can just put him in and it'd be the same?
I don't know. So we're doing a tackle show. The tackle show is next, probably, unless something happens. The tackle show should be coming Thursday. A whole tackle show. It's going to be the greatest show you've been a part of. You're so excited. A whole tackle show. So I researched, you and I split up the country to research like where we think Ohio State compares. I went the last 20 years of Ohio State tackles. and guys they had coming in, and your expected starter, what their pedigree was, what their experience was. And I'll just tell you, it's not usually like this combined. But if this is where you're leading me, and I've referenced this a million times, 2014, Darrell Baldwin, 2015, Chase Ferris. Those are fifth-year guys who had not been previous starters that Ohio State played at right tackle, and they had a lot of other guys in place. And when it's like, okay, maybe this isn't what we envisioned, but we're playing an experienced guy who we think can be solid at right tackle, and it worked. Mm-hmm. So if that's what you're saying, then I understand what you're saying. I still think this is high, that you're experienced, but, handful of starts, not a full-time starter previously, probably not recruited to be a start. Like, do you think when Josh Fryer got here, did you think to yourself, that guy will start one day?
No, probably not exactly. He was in that class that had like a handful of lower rated guys. He was the highest rated of those guys. So I guess I would have picked him out of that group for sure, but I don't know. He doesn't have the recruiting profile of a guy that you think to yourself, like, definitely a starter at some point in his career.
So to me, if it's like the last spot, okay, we got this, and then, hey, like it didn't, you don't have a perfect plan at every single position on a team. It's like, okay, well, this isn't maybe what we expected, but we think he can do this. If that's what you're doing, you do have to do that at a couple spots. Even the best teams in the country wind up doing that at a couple spots. If that's what this is, okay, but 14 still feels high to me. You think he can be more than that? You think there's a level above veteran guy who he's the best option and we think he can be solid? You think there's more than that there?
Yeah, I think at right tackle, he can be their second best offensive lineman. And maybe that's not much of a reach. But in a world where the left tackle is this athletic transfer from San Diego State who's played a lot, the two established guards, a center everyone's pretty excited about who does have more of a recruiting pedigree. I do think Josh Fryer has a higher ceiling than people realize. Like, he's a pretty good athlete. Like, I know he does not look like a guy, frankly, who would be athletic. But he was a pretty good basketball player. Like, he's got good feet. He's strong. I think he understands some of the spatial elements they need to have in the run game. He's quick enough to get downfield and go get you a linebacker and knock him down and operate in the kind of wide zone run schemes that Ohio State likes to do that do require a significant amount of athleticism. So yeah, if I'm alone on Josh Fryer Island thinking that he's going to be a pretty high level player for them at right tackle, I'm fine with that, and also happy to be wrong about it if that ends up being the case. But I sensed a fair amount of comfortability with him playing on the right side and a little unease from him when it was time to go move on the left side and see if he could do it. And I don't even want to say that he couldn't do it, but I am encouraged by the idea that they're putting him back at a spot that I think seems more natural for him.
All right, we're doing a whole pot on tackles, so we probably we'll and I had him in the 20s. I did have him on my list. We'll stop our tackle conversation there. So I did have him ranked. 15, I'll go Julian Fleming. And I think he is a guy that we can maybe forget about sometimes. Mm-hmm. He has played a lot of football for this team. And I am not projecting, he's played 808 career snaps, but they've been spread out over 3 seasons. I'm not projecting like a gigantic year for Julian Fleming, but he's a returning starter. He's going to be on the field a lot. I don't think Carnell Tate's going to take a big, giant chunk of his snaps or anything. I think he'll be a dude who's out there, certainly far more often than not. And then they throw him the ball. So, and I think it's one of those things. I mean, this is how it works at Ohio State a lot of time. I don't know. 10 or 11 of the other 13 Big Ten schools, he'd be the number 1 receiver. Mm-hmm. And here he's 3. So I think he should be off the board here, and I'll take Julian Fleming.
Productive last year, not super productive, but scored a handful of touchdowns, can stretch the field vertically, which I think is a nice element to add alongside Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. pretty good blocker as a receiver too, like maybe their best blocker as a receiver, which I don't think is a small thing in this offense. And I don't like, he was the number one receiver in his class, and in some places like the number one overall recruit in his class. In hindsight, maybe that was wrong, but just some like raw athletic traits is what got him there. But there was some polish that needed to be added to his game when he got to Ohio State. And I think little by little he's added that in spite of the injury setbacks that he's had. And like every offseason, it's like Julian Fleming is the healthiest he's been. If he can maintain that throughout the entire season, he is a good player. I think you're right. I think he'd be number one on a lot of teams. And I think there's a thought that like, oh, you know, Carnell Tate's got to play, Jaden Ballard's got to play, and Julian Fleming is a guy who's got to see his reps cut into because of that. That might be true. Maybe he plays a little less this year, but even if he does, I still think he's productive. And I think he's a guy like, he's not on the field and like defenses ignore him. Like I think he's a guy you need to be aware of, even in a universe where most of your resources are dedicated to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. I think Julian Fleming is viewed by opposing defenses as the guy that can hurt you. So yeah, I think he belongs on this list.
So I want to mention something here, because offense and defense, looking holistically as you go through an individual exercise like this, from the 2021 offense, which is just 2 seasons ago, they don't have anybody back who was in the top 10 in snaps on that offense. This is really a change in
2021. Travion
was 11th.
Oh, huh.
So when you think about the CJ Stroud, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Thayer Munford, Paris Johnson, like that Luke Whippler, that's a lot of guys who were drafted high in the NFL and we're 2 seasons removed from that. And it's like a complete turnover of that. And the thing that, so I thought that was interesting. Like, I mean, it's okay. Well, I mean, guys leave, I get it. But like it really, for how much that team in 2021, the offense had to carry that team because the defense was not very good. The defense was problematic. It's all new. It's almost all new. So I think that is a reminder. And going through this, Landis, the skill guys have to carry this offense.
Yep.
I think, and I think that means not carrying the quarterback, but propping up a new quarterback early. And I know you're excited about the run game, but I don't think it's a ground and pound kind of offense. Like when you think about, if you think this offense is going to be good, it's because you like Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming and Cade Stover and Trayvon Henderson. And it's just a reminder when you go through something like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's what separates Ohio State from everyone else in the Big Ten is their collection of skill talent. So I agree with that. 16th pick.
Yep.
Jack Sawyer.
Is that a question mark at the end of it? Or
yeah,
is there a period at the end of that?
It's a question mark because, again, I'm trying to be a responsible adult. We're running out of spots though to, I guess, include the guys that we want to include. But I think I'll go with Jack here. Jack's played a fair amount, right? What's Jack's snap count?
Jack's snap count is not overwhelming because he did not play as much last year as people thought. He's played 502 career snaps on defense, 173 in 2021, 329 last year. Okay,
that is less than I would have guessed too.
I mean, that's like JT played 503 last year. So really, JT and Zach Harrison last year played almost the exact same number of snaps, and Jack was like 180 behind him.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's the move to the defensive end, take him out of the Jack position. I think like they put a lot of weight on Jack, and it did not help him.
Physically or mentally or both?
Well, both, I suppose. And I'm talking more physical. Like he got up there pretty good, and I think like it sapped him of some athleticism that like made him the highly rated recruit that he was. And like I think he can get that back. I think if you look at him now compared to how he looked last year, I think he looks much better. It looks like a better kind of height weight combo for him. Excuse me. He is. I think like JT is pure power. I think Jack has a little bit more of an ability to be like a power / finesse guy. Which is funny. Like when he first showed up here, like Larry Johnson described, like Jack is more of a finesse guy. And then he was like 280 pounds. Like that guy's a finesse guy. But now he's more like 260, and I think he can find some kind of happy medium there between the two that can make him a more effective player than he's been. He is another guy who's not quite lived up to the recruiting rankings. I think there's going to be an interesting exercise to be done. Maybe someone's already done this, but we don't have the draft info available yet. The 2021 recruiting class, the class that like didn't have a senior high school football season, no one could go out and watch them, and they just sort of like kept the rankings from when they were 12 years old and carried them through to the end of the class. It'll be interesting to go back and see like how those guys panned out. And that is like, that's JT, that's Jack, that's Travion, that's Mike Hall, that's Denzel Burke, that's Marvin Harrison, that's Emeka Ibuka. Like clearly some guys hit, clearly some guys were underranked, some guys were overranked. It's not just at Ohio State, but that's the shorthand that we have. Jack is in that mix, and like he's a top 5 player in the country according to some places, and has not shown that ability yet. But and even if he never gets there, I think there is a world where he takes a bit of a jump this year because he is not focused on 2 different positions, and because he is in a better place physically than he's been the previous 2 years.
All right, I'll take the quarterback.
Okay.
Is it actually possible that Ohio State's quarterback will be its 17th best player?
No. Oh, well, yeah, but I don't think he will be.
There has been a lot. I think I've certainly seen some national people now coming around on like, hey, it's Ryan Day. Like the quarterback's going to be good. There was a list the other day. I struggle because the weird social media lists like work. It's like, there was, I think,
the big game boomer kind of stuff. That stuff.
I hate the big game boomer stuff. There's no way anybody can actually know all that stuff. So it means when you read something like that, it's like, oh, wow, this person really has a handle on the pulse of 130 teams. It's like, nope, they don't know anything. Mm-hmm. This was a Big Ten Network graphic, I think, that was best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I think it was J.J. McCarthy 1, Talia Tagovailoa at Maryland 2, Cade McNamara at Iowa 3. I can't remember who was 4, but Drew Aller at Penn State was 5. And so I do think we're at the point where if you're putting Drew Aller, a second-year 5-star at Penn State, on a list who's barely played, like why would you put Drew Aller ahead of the Ohio State quarterback when they have third-year and second-year guys who are 5-stars who have barely played? Drew Aller played a handful more of snaps last year, right, than Kyle McCord did or Devin Brown. But like that I find to be sort of like an odd thing. It's like almost like there's nobody else to rank. And also like Cade McNamara. So we've, I think, done this exercise. If you could take, how many Big Ten quarterbacks would you take right now ahead of the Ohio State quarterback situation?
None.
You wouldn't take JJ McCarthy?
No.
You don't think he's good?
I don't think he's that good.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Day took Kyle McCord over JJ McCarthy once upon a time. So I would take JJ McCarthy, but that's all. And actually, I think the guy that's in there that you have to keep in mind that makes me think slightly, but only slightly, is Hudson Card at Purdue. That once upon a time you were the starter at Texas, and you've been around the block a little bit. Like
you're drinking some of that Purdue Kool-Aid, like I am, man. Welcome.
No. Listen, man. I've talking about Purdue Kool-Aid. Nathan Baird has the recipe if you need some Purdue Kool-Aid.
Just black coffee. Yeah.
You can pour it in the ice cube trays and put the toothpicks in, make little popsicles. I'm just kidding. Nathan just happened to cover Purdue, so it would come up a lot. So like when you see a list like that, it's like, okay, what? I don't, does Kyle McCord have to be on this list? It's like, well, no, because we're not even 1,000% sure he's going to be the starting quarterback. So I guess you just can't put an Ohio State guy on that list. Once they name the quarterback, I'll be curious what the conversation becomes. Because here we are, we're doing a thing. If they had named, let's say that Ryan Day had named a starter before we started recording this podcast. By the time you hear it, maybe he will have named a starter. How much higher would the quarterback be on our list just if he had decided?
A few spots. Like I probably still not top 10, but a few spots higher than 17th.
Not ahead of Sonny Styles. I mean, we're not going to lose our mind here, but maybe like 13th instead of 17th. So we're held back by that. The idea that it's Ryan Day, they're highly ranked recruits, They're in a pro-style offense with a bunch of great skill guys. The quarterback is going to be good. Trust the system. Trust Ryan Day. Trust the pedigree of the two guys in the race. Is that the right analysis?
I think so. If they were in a world where like the third year for Marvin and Mecca didn't quite sync up with this new guy, I'd feel differently. But like that is such a security blanket. And frankly, even if the offensive line takes a little bit of time to gel, I still think there's ways to protect the quarterback via play calling, and still get the ball into the hands of the guys who need it. There's just like there's so much infrastructure here that I don't like. It could be a step below, I suppose, what CJ Stroud and Justin Fields did in their first years here. But even if it is, I think that's still the most productive quarterback in the Big Ten.
Ryan Day has really made a point. He's brought it up a couple times. CJ Stroud threw for 350 yards or whatever it was in his second career start in the Oregon loss in 2021. But Ryan Day said multiple times, we put too much on him. Mm-hmm. We have to run the ball. We have to play better defense. We put too much on a young quarterback there. He throws a pick at the end of that game, but no one thinks CJ Stroud lost that game, but like they're not going to live in that world. I think they're laying down a lot of stuff of this is not going to be, we live or die with the quarterback play, mm-hmm. because we have to have so many other things in place. So I think for that reason, part of that is why it makes sense to have the quarterback this low, but also we don't know who it is. All right.
Yep.
18 for you.
Kenyatta Jackson.
All right. Okay.
He's played
like 4 snaps. He's barely.
Yeah, but he's going to lead the team in sacks this year. So, like, how am I supposed to square that?
I'm so high on Kenyatta Jackson. I can't even control myself. He played 24 snaps last year. So, great speed, great bend, best pass rusher on the team.
Yeah, and like just a different kind of pass rusher. And Berm actually asked this of Ryan Day, and Ryan Day, I think, didn't quite answer it, but like Berm put the idea out into the world of strong side defensive ends is JT and the Jack. It's not them playing opposite each other. It's them playing together at that spot, and Kenyatta like a demon off the edge on the other side. And then maybe if it's not Kenyatta, it's whoever's playing the Jack position off the other side. More of a speed element over there than they've had. They've had like the actually Javonte Jean-Baptiste was on the freaks list that Bruce Feldman put out, which I couldn't believe it either. And like Kenyatta Jackson kind of looks like Javonte, but the Javonte's like play never matched up with the way he looked. Kenyatta's will. And I think he's a little bit of a different mold of a pass rusher than I think Larry's had. Like he's not even like a Chase Young, I think, or a Bosa. It's just like, I'm faster than you. I'm going to beat you to the spot, and I'm going to go get the quarterback. And like I think they desperately need an infusion of that on this defense. And he's going to give it to him, and he's going to be productive while doing it. So he's 18th now. I think he'll be closer to the top 10 by midseason.
When we watched the second practice, he dropped some spin moves in the pass rush drills. It was like, okay, here we go. Because if that's that, you don't need much more than that. If you have enough speed that the tackle is just scared to death that you're going to beat him outside around the edge, speed and bend. And I think he's got bend.
Yep.
And then your counter off of that. So he's okay. I got to get out. And then you spin move him inside off of it's like it's 2 pitches. But it's fastball, curveball. You don't need anything else. It's probably not curveball. Fastball, splitter, right? Yeah. They look the same coming out. Fastball, splitter, and you don't need anything else. And so I think he's definitely going to lead the team in sacks. And when I say there are 3 defining guys who have not played, who have a chance to define the defense, it's Sonny Styles, Jordan Hancock, and Kenyatta Jackson.
Yep.
And so here's the thing. Okay, so I talked about the offense. They don't have anybody who was top 10 in snaps from 2 years ago. The defense, they do. They have 5 guys back who were among the top 10 in snaps on the defense 2 years ago. Denzel, Burke, Cody Simon, Lathan Ransom, Tommy Eichenberg, and Steele Chambers. Here's how this defense works. They have a foundation. Eichenberg and Steele Chambers and Lathan Ransom and even JT and Mike Hall and Jack, right? They lay a foundation, and then you drop 3 dudes on top of them, and now you have both.
Yep.
And it's not that Tommy Eichenberg isn't even a better version than last year. It's that you don't need Tommy Eichenberg to be your best defensive player anymore. It's not that JT Tuimoloau maybe isn't going to be a first-round pick, but there are guys with even more talent dropping on top of him. And all of a sudden, if the conversation is Sonny, Kenyatta, Jordan Hancock, and all these guys, now you got something. And that's what has to happen. If we get to the end of the year and we say, hey, Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg and Lathan Ransom were their best defensive players, it doesn't mean it's a bad defense, but I don't think it's special. These are the guys who have a chance to make it special.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar, I think, from like 19 when it's like Devon Hamilton, solid guy. Pete Werner, solid guy. Jordan Fuller, solid guy. You got it at all three levels of the defense, but you need to sprinkle some studs around that. And I think that is the recipe for success for Ohio State's defense in 2023.
He just looked different in the spring, right?
Yeah.
In the spring, I was like, what is happening?
6'5", 2. I think he's listed at 250. Maybe he's not quite that high. Super long arms. Like, just looks like he was built in a defensive end lab.
Really good. All right. You don't have to temper anything on Kenyatta Jackson. I didn't even have him on my list. That's how mature I am.
You didn't have him on your list?
No, because he's played 24 snaps.
I'm disappointed.
I know. I'm mad. I hate being mature. It's the worst. Okay, I'll take Matt Jones. Hey, cool. Hey, I was taking Kenyatta Jackson. Did that make you feel good inside?
It did. Yeah.
I'll take the guy. Matt Jones has played at least 100 snaps 4 straight years. 2019, 114 snaps. 2020, 205 snaps. 2021, 459 snaps. 2022, 728 snaps. 1,506 snaps on offense. The most number of snaps on this team. He is a solid Big Ten guard, and we can go back to when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right? That he's missed when he's not there. Now, when they did put Josh Fryer in at right guard against Michigan last year, Josh Fryer then did a pretty good job. But again, like Enoch Vamahi was second on the depth chart. They put him in. It was like, well, the offense can't work anymore.
Right.
The offense has stopped functioning. It functioned when Matt Jones is on the field. And he battled a foot thing all last year, and they missed him when he was out. So he's back. That's good. He's probably going to play 700 or 800 snaps again. And like, you got to give a nod to a guy who's been around doing it for a long time. So I'll take him 19.
Yeah, absolutely deserves to be on this list. I did not meet by picking Josh Fryer over him. That was in no way me saying like I think that Matt Jones is not a good player. He's a very solid, like, potential first team All Big Ten kind of player. And if and when he gets that distinction, he'll earn it. Doesn't blow you away, I think, as a guard, but is more than solid at that position and has been a steady presence for them. 20th.
Let's talk more about Kenyatta Jackson real quick.
Yeah. Back to Kenyatta. Mayan Williams.
That's who I had next.
Yeah, I think Mayan Williams is like, and for as much as like we talked about Trevion and Ryan Day and like the separation he did with his words there, like I'm going to choose to believe that was more a product of like Mayan just being out of practice a little bit and not being front of mind. Healthy Mayan Williams is an excellent Big Ten running back. If he is healthy, when he is healthy, he will be a major part of this offense. He's going to get his carries. He provides them a physical element as a runner that they need. Short yardage, like his touchdown run against Georgia when he was hurt and he just like pushed the entire defense into the end zone. Like that's what he brings you. That's what they need. So as long as he is physically able to give him that, he will be used in such a manner this year. But also, like, he's not just that. If you look at some of the numbers like on PFF from last year of make you miss stuff, average yards after contact, it's like Bijan Robinson and then Mayan Williams on a smaller sample size, but he's good. He's really good about creating a small target for guys to hit, I guess, because he's small already. He's got good balance. Maybe doesn't give you much as a pass rusher. Maybe he's more of a one-cut guy as a back. That's fine. I don't need him to be super flashy. I think he's a solid player when he's available for them. And they definitely missed him at points last year too, because Trevion was going through it for like the whole year. And while Dallin Hayden stepped up in a big way, I don't think he quite gave you what Mayan Williams gave you when Mayan Williams was healthy.
Saved him in the Northwestern game with that touchdown run when there was no functional offense in the wind. I've come a long way on Mayan Williams. I mean, he's a plan B recruit. I'm not sure this guy's ever going to play here. I do think I don't think he's a 1. I don't think he's a Big Ten 1. But if he's a 1A, second guy, especially like you put him in the third series when the defense is maybe just starting to get tired a little bit, and you can do some of that. He can be really effective. I think he's really good in a combo, but just don't go too far with it. People who love Mayan, there were a lot of trade doubters last year, right? I don't think Mayan Williams 22 carries a game is not where you want to get, I think, for this offense. Because I do think there are times when Mayan, as a one-cut guy, which I think is right, sometimes if the first thing's not there, and if he tries to power through and then it's sort of okay, this, you got stretched out a little bit and it's over. Yep. And so you want him to hit a hole, run through a tackle, and do his thing. So as a compliment to Trey, who's better in space, more of a problem in the pass game if they throw him the ball this year, which they should, and more explosive, and then you bring in Mayan, that's how Big Ten football should work. Now, again, I'd take Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards. I might take Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State. I might take Braylon Allen and Ches Malucci at Wisconsin because I like Braylon Allen so much. But I also think maybe 4 of the 5 best running back tandems in the country are in the Big Ten. And top end Trey and Mayan, I think, are in that conversation.
Yeah, they are. And I also think it's possible that if you rank the top 10 running backs in the Big Ten, does Ohio State have 3 guys on there if you include Dallin Hayden?
No, we should do that. Let's just do that. Let's throw that in real quick. 45 minutes at the end of this podcast. That's a good one to do later. It's a really good running league this year, but Ohio State has good depth there.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have injuries. Then the next year you have depth. All right, 21st, my last pick. I'll take Jihad Carter, but I think I need you to help me explain this.
Sure.
If we like Sonny Styles and Lathan Ransom closer to the line of scrimmage and making plays, and we think that Jihad Carter's going to be the third starter at safety, then that means he has to be the deep guy. He's an experienced guy. He's played Power 5 football for a lot of years at Syracuse. Stay back there and make the tackles when guys get out of the house and be Jordan Fuller light, and you deserve to be in the top 20. So that's what I'm thinking maybe they want him to be.
Yeah, I think it is. And he played not identical, but similar enough defense at Syracuse that also utilized 3 safeties. And he played all 3 of those positions over his time there at a starter level for a defense that got better every year that he was there and was kind of good by his last time there. So productive player in major college football, experienced guy. I would have thought that he was coming here to be more of the nickel. But if the idea is that these are our 3 best safeties, which of these 3 is best equipped to play the deep middle more often than not, it's probably Jihad Carter. It's a little bit of a gamble, I think. And maybe they'll do some rotating and rocking and rolling of the safeties, and Jihad will play down sometimes, similar to what we saw from Ronnie Hickman. But I think anytime you can put a productive veteran guy who's seen a lot of stuff as sort of the last line of defense at the top of your defense, that's a good thing. So I expect him to play that role, and if he is, he should be in that spot. At 20, top 22.
Did you think he should be drafted? Did you have him on your list?
Yeah, I would have.
Okay.
Yeah, with what we have left, yeah, for sure.
All right, last pick to you at 22.
Tyleik Williams.
Okay.
I find Tyleik to be a little frustrating as a player because I think he has all the talent in the world, and I try really hard not to criticize players in this way because who am I? I'm just a guy talking about football. I just think Tyleik limits himself sometimes, and admittedly so. The reason I'm comfortable saying it is because he has said it. If that switch ever flips for him, man, he is a wrecking ball inside, and I don't know if he's going to get there, but if we're drafting the top 22 guys, he's going to play a decent amount for this defense, and he can be a difference maker. He's banged up right now. He should be back in camp before the season starts, according to Ryan Day. Get his legs under him, get a little bit better conditioning. He's got freaky athletic traits for a man of his size. And even if he's only giving you 15 to 20 snaps a game, I think those can be 15 to 20 pretty important snaps in a game. So I think he should be higher. Given his skill set, he should be higher than 22nd. I think based on what he's done to this point, 22nd feels right to me. But if he reaches that potential, or even comes close to it, I think it transforms the defensive line.
Yeah, and he's said, right? Yeah, as you said, like maybe I wasn't in the shape I need to be in, and that has kept me from being on the field more. 183 snaps on defense as a freshman in 21, 251 last year, 434 for his career. I did not have him in my top 22, but I get it. I think I would have taken Ty Hamilton instead of him. I had Carson Hinsman, the center, and Ty Hamilton at defensive tackle as the two guys in my top 22 that didn't get picked. Who did you have on your list that we wound up not picking?
The only one was Davis and Igbinosun, which
Okay.
would have been maybe a little bit of projection. This is why I didn't pick them.
Yeah. So I do think in the end, right now, I don't think I question whether right now that's a top 5, top 10 when you look at that, if it's national championship caliber. I do. I think like 1 through 40, this is a pretty good roster, which is what happens when you have a good recruiting class in 21 that's hitting its third year, and you have almost all the important guys from that class who have stayed. And then you have guys like Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg and Cade Stover and Matt Jones and important players with experience who stayed, who did not go to the NFL. I think they have a good depth of talent. I think if they are going to win the national championship, be a very, very, very good team, the top 10 is going to have to look different by the middle of the year and the end of the year than it looks now. And the guys that we talked about are going to have to springboard ahead of those other guys, not because the experienced guys aren't good, but because these young guys are studs. And now you have elite on top of depth, and you've got something. Right now, if we tried to compare the top 10 to what like the 2014 team was, or even maybe what the 2016 team with with all the studs they have on defense, I think it falls short.
Especially when, like, even though we think the quarterback is going to be good, like he's probably not going to play at the level that CJ Stroud played at last year. So when you take that out of the equation, then like everything else kind of has to rise with it. So like I think this top 10 is probably good enough to get you there, because it was good enough to get them there last year. But get them over the top. I agree. There needs the young, super high ceiling players need to be higher on this list if that's going to happen.
Okay, tackles. Did you do any tackle research yet? Or are you saving it?
I've started it. I've not completed it.
I did some very deep dives onto in like Rob Sims. A lot of Rob Sims deep dives on my computer at this point in time. So we have that coming. We think that's really important, and we want to put them in context as we go along on these podcasts. Some of you are accustomed to this. Some of you are new to this, but that's the goal. Context, big picture. I think we either want to do one of two things here, Landis, right? We either go 20,000 feet, total big picture, put Ohio State in context with the rest of the Big Ten and the rest of college football, talk national college football, or go in with the magnifying glass and go granular and try to talk about, the 22 most important guys on the team and very specific things about them. But all that takes a long time.
It does take a long time, but I don't want to live in the middle. I don't want to live in the boring middle ground. We like the extremes, baby.
We're so on the edge. Look at us. Just a couple of guys in a Hawaiian shirt and yet another Philadelphia t-shirt.
This is just the white version of the shirt I wore last time.
I have it in 9 different colors. I do not have this orange Hawaiian shirt in any other colors. Thank goodness. So, okay. We appreciate you guys being part of it. If you're on YouTube watching us, awesome. You get to see, faces. If you're listening on podcasts, awesome. Thanks for taking us along as you go through your lives. If you want to try the YouTube show and have that on, if you're only a podcast person, we want to try to hit you as many different ways as possible. We want to hit you 3 times a week. And when we hit you, we're going to hit you, and then we're going to hug you, and we're going to keep it in tight because we're not going to let you go for at least like 100 minutes. So thanks to everybody who's listening, who is finding Kings of Columbus in the podcast feed. For Philly Billy, Bill Landis, I'm French Vanilla, Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.